Hello, welcome to my studio. So today I'm going to show you how to use your palette knife in a painting and specifically show you how to use it to create edges. So first I'm going to be doing a demonstration just on this canvas here, just kind of showing you bare bones of what it looks like and the techniques that you can use to create edges with your palette knife. Then I'm also going to show you a painting demonstration, kind of working on an actual painting and how you can use the palette knife in that painting. It looks a little different when you're actually working on a painting because there's so many other factors that are coming into play. So I feel like that will be really helpful, kind of joining these two different demonstrations together. But wait till the end because I will show you the subject matter that I'm going to be painting from for my painting demonstration. It sometimes is really helpful to kind of see the actual subject matter to kind of get more of an idea of just how the painting was created and developed. Before I get started on this painting demonstration here though, I want to just briefly talk about edges and just why they're so important and why, and then of course I'm going to talk about how this can be really useful when creating edges. So when you look at, I feel like most of us have seen those really beautiful Renaissance portraits and just how it's kind of seamless just over the head, just where you can see just these transitions and it's just really soft. Those are soft edges and they're creating this great softness just all over, and you see it in landscape painting where if just it just kind of goes off and off in the distance and you see really far back. Those are soft edges that are leading your eye back in space. And then there's hard edges or sharp edges. And that's where you have a very dark value next to a very light value, and that creates that contrast between the two. And those types of edges come forward and they kind of push space up front. So again, kind of that landscape painting example, very often you have those sharp edges in front. Most often actually, because that makes it feel like it's coming forward, and then the soft edges go back in space. And so in all different kind of painting, whether it's abstract, whether it's representational, whether you're painting a portrait, whatever it is, edges are absolutely crucial. And it's edges that actually make a painting very interesting, and it's that which kind of grips the viewer and it makes you really look at it and it draws you in. So they're very important for painting. And this is very helpful for kind of bringing your painting to create those really interesting and good edges. All right, so now I'll get going on this demonstration here where I'll just show kind of the bare bones of like how to create these edges using a palette knife. And what I've done here is I actually have one brush I'm going to use for dark colors, or a dark color, dark value, other brush for light values. So I'm really just, again, this is super basic, I'm just using ivory black and white. So I'm really working in monochrome because the most important thing here is just to show the bare bones of how to create edges using a palette knife. So to start off here, I might actually move this up closer so you can see it better, the canvas. Okay, for this demo, I'm not painting any particular subject matter. It's going to be rather abstract. I'm just showing the edges as they are on their own. So to start out with here, I'm going to first apply this black here, and I'm going to be creating a very hard edge, not soft, hard. Then put white right next to it. Again, that white might blend in a little bit into just the canvas because they're a little bit more similar in value than the black is. Okay, so here you can see we have really two very distinct values, one very dark, the other very light. Then of course they have a very kind of hard edge between them, but you can reinforce that even more, making it straighter and also just even sharper, kind of get more nitty-gritty there with kind of the distinction between the two. And obviously this is a very extreme example here. You can do this on more nuanced kind of levels where maybe the values are a little bit more similar to one another. You can see there a little bit of a bleed happened, and sometimes that happens in the painting process, and that's where the palette knife can come in and kind of rectify that and make that a little bit more just succinct. or distinct there between the two. Now, this is very, very hard edge. And then of course, as I mentioned, this also is completely valid for making softer edges as well. So I'm going to do black again here, apply black paint. All right, there we go. And then I'm going to do a value that's a little bit more similar than the white. So a little bit closer to the black, that next to it. So already, of course, the edge is a little bit softer, but we can reinforce that even more by using our palette knife. And here, by doing this. So you can see just how it's even more kind of fluid transition between here to there. And let's say we didn't want it quite this kind of fluid between the two. We wanted a little bit more distinction, but still that soft edge. Let's say whatever your painting is calling for that, we can do that. And then kind of make that transition softer between the two. There we go. So you can see kind of the difference between this and this, and how this is this very sharp edge, and we use it differently. You know, use this to kind of press up against the other value to kind of create that very, very, very hard edge. And here we're using the whole blade to kind of, in a way, almost, you're not mixing the two, but you're sort of smudging it in a sense. You're smudging the two. And this is also brilliant for those people maybe who don't like using their fingers to touch their paint. And it's actually, if you are working with heavy metal paints, it probably isn't the best idea if you're not wearing gloves to do that. And the palette knife is a great tool for that. What it's also great for is to scrape out. And very often, let's say you've painted something and just the things aren't unified, the values aren't working together that well, your edges just aren't going well either, among all the other things. And that calls for scraping out is really a great way to kind of bring it back to the bare bones. And that means just literally scraping out using kind of the edge of the blade and pressing it down on your canvas and scraping out the painting, and then reworking into it. And that helps with working with edges because it gets rid of those hard edges and it softens the edges even more, those that are soft, and helps you to work into it kind of, and then as you work into it, bring out those harder edges and push back the softer edges even more. And very often when you do this, your painting ends up being much better than it ever was before, because you're able to kind of have that cleaner slate in a sense. Your painting is still there in a way, it's a ghost, but all the edges are pushed back and are soft, and then you can really mold them even better and just mold them more to what you need it to be. All right, so that is this just bare bones demonstration. And just as a last note, before we move on to the actual painting demonstration, I'm really excited to kind of bring you through that. I want to say that the palette knife is also really indispensable when it comes to drawing and using it to create edges and lines, and to kind of be able to measure just how wide, long, short something is, and using it then to create edges at the same time as you're doing that. And I'll be getting into these kind of more nuanced things in the painting demonstration. Now, to get started, I first made this value underpainting, this monochrome underpainting, to get an understanding of the values. Now, I start creating these edges right from the beginning. Right here, you can see I'm using my palette knife to kind of create those softer edges between where the paint is and that lighter area, and also kind of mark out areas, kind of scrape out areas of paint. And here you can say soften that edge, and then also sharpen another edge, scrape out paint. Again, like I mentioned before, the palette knife is terrific also for drawing and kind of carving out areas, just like I'm doing here. I'm kind of carving out that kind of left side of that figure, bottom left side. And that helps to be able to take away paint, then to maybe apply something lighter if needed, or perhaps you're just making a harder, sharper edge. And as a side note, the palette knife is also helpful for measuring and making sure that what you're doing is kind of the correct size, width that it needs to be. And again, it's terrific for drawing out areas because you can scrape out paint and kind of draw out, carve out particular areas that need to be lighter in value. And that's exactly what I'm doing here with this bottom part of the figure. And here I'm kind of scraping out some paint to take out, to make it lighter, also draw, scrape out areas. I'm just using it constantly. And here this area needs to be a little bit lighter, so I'm kind of marking that out using the palette knife. Again, this is kind of in a way drawing with the palette knife to make it lighter, make that edge softer. I constantly use my palette knife throughout a painting. Of course, here you're seeing more of the highlights of when I'm using a palette knife, but it really is constantly being used as I'm painting. In fact, I keep it in my hand at all times. It's almost like a safety blanket for me because it's just, I feel like I can't paint without having my palette knife. That may be a good or bad thing, but that's all to say that it's so indispensable to the painting practice. It's so just incredibly helpful, and it can really help you to do a lot of things. I think in painting there's often this fear of changing something and getting rid of something, and the palette knife does make it easier, just like I'm doing here, kind of moving things, kind of pushing things down and moving things over. It makes that process a little bit easier and helps with that. Now you do need to apply paint in order to really capture and create those softer edges, because otherwise you're just dealing with the texture of the canvas and it's not really going to, the paint's not going to move really. So I had to apply paint in order to create that soft edge that's on that shoulder area of the figure here. And the same thing goes here for the head part of the figure here, just applying paint and to create that soft transition with my palette knife between a slightly darker value area and that slightly lighter value area. When you paint, you always want to think about and look for the value shapes that exist in your subject matter and paint those. And here I'm carving out a particular lighter value shape that exists to the left of that slightly darker value area. Before I work into that value shape though, I'm kind of moving here to the upper area, and I've sort of softened the edge of the kind of head area and then that hand, and kind of working on unifying that part of this painting. Again, this is all, it's a complete work in progress. You're kind of just really trying to keep the whole painting unified as a whole. Now, I wanted to include this part of the painting here of creating this very distinct edge. It's a very, very hard edge, and kind of using the palette knife to really create that. But at the same time, I'm also working with it to get the drawing to be correct. Want it to be in the correct place, so it's kind of being moved around, but at the same time, I'm using my palette knife to kind of adjust it as needed. And here you can see me working on scraping out some paint there on that right side column part of this kind of architectural detail that's in the painting. Again, you can see here really working with the palette knife to create clear, clean edges and lines. And in a way, I'm scraping out some of that lighter value paint to reveal the darker color that exists underneath, and kind of trying to create a straighter, just really hard edge. Now here, kind of again, working with a palette knife to create this soft transition between a lighter value and a darker value. And this is kind of getting that big picture sort of soft transition, and then I start working into more of the detail aspects, those fabric folds that exist, and then using my palette knife to work with those more subtleties that are in my subject. Very often, sometimes when you're kind of getting into those more nitty-gritty specific areas of light and shadow parts, value shapes that exist, your painting can start to look a little bit kind of like things are separate from each other. And right here, I was able to use the palette knife to kind of unify that area, kind of just scrape things together a little bit, but not so much where it just kind of leaves this big smudgy mess. We still see kind of the distinct value areas, but they're unified more. Now, I'm not going to complete this painting here for this demonstration because I feel like I've shown what needs to be shown, kind of to get those nuances and subtleties that of how you can use your palette knife to create edges in your painting. All right, so as I mentioned already, the painting is unfinished, but it's still really kind of showed just all the different ways that you can apply the palette knife in the painting process, and just also the more nuanced aspects of how to use it and how it's used, how you can use it, the possibilities with that. And I promised to show you the subject matter that I actually used to paint this. And it's kind of a fun thing. I found this relief sculpture at a thrift store maybe a month ago or so, and it's actually a copy by an artist after another artist, namely Lorenzo Ghiberti, and he made a lot of relief sculptures that are on the Duomo building, the Florence Cathedral, and the baptistry building that's right next to it. The door is filled with all of these different scenes of just reliefs, and they're beautiful. They're really extraordinary. Right now, today, those are all replicas that are on that door, and this particular one is also a replica by a different artist after that relief sculpture. And so I found this I got it for $5 at a thrift store, which is awesome. And I decided it'd be such a great subject for today's demonstration because it has just so many different edges that you can see very clearly, because of course the monochromatic aspect of that helps you to see it a little bit more clearly. The lighting that I was seeing when I painted from this was very different. It was actually sitting on my shelf. There we go. Sitting on my shelf right there. So I had an awesome view of it right from my easel here. And it was getting light from the window kind of casting across it. So just really beautiful lighting. It was awesome. It was great. So I could clearly see just those kind of really sharp and soft edges that existed on it. And in the painting, you can really tell just there's this depth that exists. Things that are coming forward, things that are going back. So you can really see that change in space and that volume that's there. And that's all because of the edges. And even though it's very shallow, it's not very deep, it feels very deep. And that's the power of edges. And that's also the power of how you can use your palette knife to reinforce those and create those. So I encourage you to practice using your palette knife to create these edges, and it's important to set up subject matter, use subject matter that is helpful for that. You can set up a still life, you can work with the landscape, but seek things out where you can kind of clearly see those soft edges working, those sharp edges working, and then how you can really kind of manage with that and kind of reinforce those in a painting. Now below, I'll link all the materials that I've used in this demonstration, and of course I'll also link the palette knives that I really like. So there's a couple different ones that I like, so I'll link those all below, and I'll link specifically exactly which one this is. Has a lot of paint on the handle. It used to be black, but this is, I can't remember what brand, but I'll link it below. And as ever, if you have any questions at all, please put them in the comment section below, or if you'd just like to say hello, I love hearing from you, so please put that below, and I'll see you in the next video.